In Finland we have a very long and old tradition of building a lot of our own tools by ourselves. And it starts right in the elementary school, where it's actually mandatory for kids to learn woodcraft, handicrafts, and all that stuff. And in just a few minutes, I'm gonna be showing you how I built this knife over here, step by step, pretty much. I did it a few years ago, so I'm gonna do a little voiceover on top of that footage. But before that, I'm just gonna tell you a few things about these knives and about the tools and the stuff that you need if you want to build one yourself. The traditional Finnish knife is called Puukko. It looks like this usually, and it's a different type of knife compared to a lot of the other survival or hunting knives that you see internationally. And it comes, I don't really know how old the tradition is, but even the word Puukko doesn't really mean a knife. It's its own thing. There's a different word for knife, and it's not really a hunting knife, it's not a cooking knife, it's not fishing knife, it's all of those things, and mostly it's for whittling and woodwork. But in general, just it's an everyday tool, which is probably the most important tool actually for any kind of outdoors hobbies. So it's very important to have a good knife, and it's very important to have a good blade on it, a very sharp, and keep it sharp, because there's this saying which goes pretty much so that the most dangerous knife is a dull knife, which is actually true, because if you have a sharp knife, you don't have to use that much force to do whatever you're doing, and if you have a dull knife, you're more likely to cut yourself because you have to use more force. So anyway, like, these traditions pretty much come from the Stone Age. I don't really know how far back they go, but they do go way back. And we also have this thing called leuku. This is a one that I did 15 years ago, so it doesn't look that nice. It was one of the first knives that I did. I don't personally do any blacksmith stuff. I don't have gear or a workshop for that, so I buy my blades from local blacksmiths who do them. But anyway, this is kind of like a version of machete. Works in the same way. It's used mostly for actually doing firewood. You can use it for a lot of things as well, all kinds of things that you can imagine, but for the most part, a knife like this is just out of the league. It's way too large and heavy to actually carry around or do anything really with it. And even this knife is kind of a big one actually. For the like 99% of the jobs that you really ever do outdoors, you can do it with a knife like this. This is actually not made by me. This is made by some handicrafter, and it's actually made out of a the handle part is made out of reindeer bone. It's kind of like a leather knife really, but you can use this for cutting up fish or whittling, or really like 99% of the stuff that you ever need to do with a knife you can do with a knife like this. The blade is probably 6 centimeters long. That's enough. So a lot of times people just go overkill and they get a bushcrafting knife like this. This is a Gerber one, which is actually a pretty good one. It has a little piece over here that you can use for sawing, and it's shaped kind of like a hunting knife, and it has a little whistle over here and all kinds of fancy things. But it's very heavy, and for the most stuff that you ever need to do with a knife, it's just an overkill, way too big. So anyway, but that's just kind of not the point of this video, to talk about knives in general. A traditional Finnish knife comes with a leather. This is what you call it. I'm not sure if there is an English word for it. We call it tuppi, but it's basically like a holder for the knife, And this one is, I did this, I'm not that good with the leather work, but I did this anyhow. And it's made of moose leather actually, and completely handmade, and not the prettiest, but it gets the work done. It fits quite well over there. The blade that I have over here is made by a blacksmith from Lapland, and he does all these things handmade, and it's very nice work. And it's made out of carbon steel, which means that it gets rusty if it gets wet. So it's very important to always dry it up if you use it. For example, if you cut up a fish or something, you always have to clean it immediately, otherwise it gets rusty. You can always obviously sharpen it, but still, it works the best if you just always keep it clean and oil it up once in a while. Some of the really well, all the material that you really need for this are on this table. You need a little bit of wood. This is birch wood. This is actually a type of birch wood which is kind of rare. It has this cool pattern. It's a bit more expensive than a traditional birch. I used with this knife a flame oak or hairy oak. It's a tree, I believe, if I recall, it's from Australia, and it's used in a lot of woodwork and handicrafts. It has a very nice, kind of similar look to the birch over here. But the most important thing is that you use hard wood. It has to be extremely tough and hard, because otherwise it's a no-go. But a piece like this is enough for a just a traditional knife. You don't need any bigger piece. You can even have a little bit smaller one. And then, well, sometimes we do use also these horns or antlers, I should say. This one is, I think it's a moose antler. It could be reindeer as well. I don't remember at this point. But sometimes people do the whole handles from these, and sometimes you can also just cut little pieces and use them as a decoration. And then obviously you need leather for this part over here. If you're doing it the traditional way, you can also obviously come up with different types of solutions, but traditionally we use leather. And then you need, I'm not sure if there is a word for these in English. I couldn't find it online anyhow. But if you know it, please write it down in the comments. These are called hellas, and these are made usually out of copper or brass. These are mostly for decoration, just so that it looks fancy. This one goes at the bottom, and this one goes, the blade goes from here like this. And this one is not mandatory. I didn't use one with this or with the huge machete. So it's not mandatory, but it's a little decoration that you can add on. A lot of times it is there. But there are different shapes of this. This is one that I did. It has just, it's not ready yet. And actually the one that I used in this one is one that I cut from this brass. It's not a pipe or whatever you call it. It's heavy because it's right now it's pretty big. It looks like a coin, but then, well, you'll see it in a few moments how I did it. I did this one from this similar piece. But yeah, then you obviously need the blade. I have a bunch of different blades over here. These are factory made, actually, not by any blacksmith. This is a traditional hunting knife type of a blade, overkill for most of the stuff that you ever need to do. And then here's actually a nice just a meat knife actually. That I should finish these because I have a bunch of these over here waiting. Then you need sandpaper, maybe just some regular, woodwork tools like these, but not really anything fancy. You can speed up the process with electronic tools. but it's not even mandatory. You can do it completely by your hand as well. I think it's one of the best features in outdoors hobbies when you carry yourself things that have a soul. It doesn't have to be built by you, but if you can do it, try it out. You don't have to be professional to succeed in doing a knife that is completely usable, like this one.
So here you can actually see me now building the knife. A few years back, I used a hand drill to drill the basic hole, and pretty much all the drilling that I did, which isn't a lot, but anyway, here you can see me fitting the blade and the rod of the blade, or the basic, that part that goes inside the handle, that part, fitting that one to the handle. That's the first step that you want to do. Obviously, first you want to choose the materials, and I think it's best to have some kind of thought beforehand. Before you start actually building your knife, you wanna think what you're gonna use that knife for. Here you can see me starting now with the decoration plate of brass, and this part you want to be careful, because the drill bit that I used over here is extremely thin and it's hard steel, and then the brass is a different kind of material, so it's very easy to break these bits, and I think I broke a few when I did this. So in this part I'm drilling now 2 holes into the brass, and I wanted to make sure that they are centered, and the holes need to be a little bit smaller than what is the width of that part that goes inside, the part of the blade, because if the holes are larger at this point, they will be even larger during this part where I shape the holes to become one larger hole, and it has to be exact with the blade. So as you can see over there, it fits quite well. And here you can see me using a file to shape that part, and this was a pretty long process, even though it's quite soft material, that brass. It's easy to shape, but you wanna be extremely precise so that it looks nice. And yeah, I think I used probably several hours for that, because I did that completely by hand. And here you can see me trying to fit that blade inside the wood, but this part is actually probably the trickiest part in the whole knife making thing. And here you can see me with my dad actually burning the blade inside that wooden piece. That's a traditional way of doing it. Well, we used a this spot welding machine to heaten up the blade, but you can use an oven or any kind of torch or whatever fire. But that's one way to do it. You can also just drill it, but it's a lot easier to actually fit it precisely when you actually burn that blade, that part of the blade that goes within the wood. So then it fits perfectly, because it burns that hole to be precise. If you just drill it randomly, then there's a good chance that the hole is going to be larger than you want, and then there's a risk that the blade is going to be flimsy within the handle, and well, it can be dangerous, and it's just not going to work well. Here you can see me using the sandpaper with water to completely just shine up that little piece of brass, because you want it to look as shiny as possible. And there it is, my precious. It's beautiful when it's completely shiny. And here you can see me using actually epoxy glue, and epoxy glue is what I like to use to glue up the knife into the handle. And you want to be precise and accurate with this. You don't want to get the epoxy going all over the place, and you don't want to put too much of it. Just a little bit is enough, because the epoxy itself isn't actually the thing that keeps the blade within the handle. The whole point is that the hole needs to be so accurate that it itself is just sitting there perfectly, and the glue is just a final piece in that puzzle, really. And then you leave it to dry up. You want to check out when it's drying that there's not going to be much of, any type of spillings. So just, keep an eye on it. And this part, you want to cover up the blade well for two reasons. For one, so that you don't mess up the blade, because it's already finished at this point. So just cover it up as nicely as you can, and be careful. My thumb remembers an accident that happened when I was building my first knife almost 20 years ago. I didn't cover up that blade well enough, and I was actually working right over there, as I'm working the same spot in this video, and somehow my hands just slipped and my thumb got split with the knife, and well, it wasn't pretty. I still have a little scar in my thumb from that, and there was a lot of blood. So please be extremely careful when you do these things, and cover up the blade. And here's the final step. We are already done. I used a timber oil and a little brush just to give it a final look. And I think I did like 5 layers of it. I don't like to use varnish because by time they tend to crackle. So all kinds of oil-based things I feel are the best for that.
And what is so great about this hobby is that you can be so imaginative with the materials, use local materials. You can use even plastic for the handle, or any kind of material that you can come up with. Thanks for watching, have fun outdoors, and as always, you are the best, so keep it up with the great comments. I loved all that stuff, so yeah, bye bye.